Hello everyone. So let's solve the problem B of this contest, right? The problem states sort vowels by frequency. So we are given a string of S consisting of lowercase English characters. Rearrange only the vowels in the string so that they appear in non-increasing order of their frequency. Non-increasing order means the vowels which are given to you should be decreasing, means for the highest frequency comes first, then comes the lower frequency, then lower to that, and so on and so forth. If multiple vowels have same frequency, order them by the position of their first occurrence of in S, right? Return the modified string which you will have. Vowels are A, E, I, O, U, and the frequency of a letter is the number of times it occurs in the string, right? So let's look at an example of lead code, right? So what if my example is lead code? So first you need to figure out what are the vowels in this. So E is a vowel, and what is its count? It's 3, right? Then O is a vowel. What is its count? It is 1, and no other character is a vowel, right? So what we will do is simply traverse on the characters. If it's L, you will do nothing. If it's vowel, what you will say? I will say bring out my set which stores the maximum number of characters. We will discuss that topic, how we will do this. So let's look at the test case. So here comes E, again a E, again E will come, T comes, C a consonant. Instead of this O, E had the maximum number of frequency and we have only used 2 times the E, so we will use a E at this place. Then D is a consonant, and instead of this E, O will come, right? Let's look at another test case, right? A, let me copy it. Alright, so give me a minute. Yeah, so let's look at this now, right? So if you count the number of characters out of it, A comes 3-4 times, right? E comes 1 time, I comes twice, and then O comes thrice, right? So if you sort them, right, so this will give you a table of A comes 4, O comes 3, I comes twice, and E comes only once, right? Now you will go on doing this, right? So all characters are vowels, so you will simply place them, right? That is A, 4 times A, then 3 times O, that is O, then twice of I, and a single time of E, right? So this is a final string that will be formed, and if you look at that, that is a final string, right? And then B, A, E, I, O, U, right? B, A, E, I, O, U, right? Now let's look at this as well, right? I think placing this as A comes once, E comes once, I comes once, right? O and U all comes one, right? So how will it be done? First comes B, you won't do anything. Then comes A, you won't do anything. E, I, O, U. So this is the string that will be returned, right? So there is no change in the initial and final letters, right? So if you look at the time constraints, it is 1E5, right? So we need to write a solution which works in group of n or n log n, right? Now how will we do that, right? So by far, if you have thought and not able to solve it, the problem is easy. You just need to be a bit implemented on how you will do that thing, right? So what would have happened if you have stored if you had created a map and stored wait a second, yes, store the frequency of each characters, right? Frequency of each characters. Okay, you could do that, right? How will you do that? You will simply use a map, right? Map and store the vowels frequency, right? Okay, this is the step number 1. What is the step number 2? You will create a vector, vector of tuple, right? Now what is the use of tuple? Tuple will store, first it will store a int, again a int, and then a character. Now what does this mean, boy? This means that first character will be an integer, right? And that integer will be count. Second character will be the first occurrence, right? Because you need to make sure that if two characters, let's say A came twice and E also came twice, A came at first position where A came was 0, let's say, and E came at 4, then which one will be on your first priority? A will be on your first priority. Why? Because A was seen at index 0. The first index where A was seen was at 0. Irrespective of where it was seen next, you don't care. Right? You just care about the first occurrence of an element, right? So first occurrence, so I'm just writing as first occur, and third will be a character, just to so that you can store them, right? Now how will we that look like, right? Let's take an example and see. Let's say the first one is only a better one, right? Let's look at that, right? So let's say we had lead code, right? So we will traverse, we will create a map, right? And map will store map of E as 3, map of O as 1, and nothing else, right? Now now if your map simply would have stored this, then this might be a bit problematic for you. Now why I'm saying that, because let's say you don't you just know the count of any character, right? You don't know which character this character came at which position at first, right? So how will you do that? You will simply say, okay, while you are traversing on map, don't first think of creating simply a map, right? You first step is traverse on the string, right? Traverse on the string. Now while traversing on the string, if you encounter, if it is a vowel, then what you will say? You will say, okay, let me do quite a few things, right? We will say first, let me look in my map. Let me find in my map that is that character exist in my map. If your character does not exist, if map.find is equal to is let's say equal to map.end, right? Let's understand it. If your map does not consist that, what does this mean? This means that this is the first occurrence of that element, right? So what will you do? You will say simply, okay, map of s of I will be equal to that count becomes 1 because this is the first time, and I means that this I stores the first occurrence of element, right? So how will your map look like? Your map will look like after the first occurrence of E, it will look something like E comma 1 comma I was seen at index 1, right? E comma 1 comma 1, right? When you came to the second index and you will look in your map, you will find the character E. You will say, okay, I found the character E in my map. I don't update my, this is called the count, right? This is count and this is first occurrence, right? All right. So what you will say, okay, I have E in my map, so I don't update it. I say E, count becomes 2, and first occurrence remains 1, right? Okay. Then you went to T, you won't do anything because it's a consonant. Same for C. Now comes O. What will you do for O? You will say, does my map contain a no? It will say no. You will say, okay, 0, O, its first occurrence count is 1, and the occurrence where we had it was 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it will be 5, right? So this is how your map will ultimately look like. Now, what is this map doing? This won't do anything, right? So because map is a simply linear thing, right? First come, first serve. But if any element had more characters, then that would not be useful for us. Let's say A came 70 times, right, in a string, and the occurrence was 10. So map will store simply like this. So you need a data structure which can store based on how many times it came, right? So what we will do, we will create an array, create a array, right? Simply a simple array, right? Which will be like a array means a vector of tuple, right? Now what will this tuple store? As I said, first will be count. You have the count of every element, you have the first index of every element, and you have the character which character came at what position, right? We will simply place them in and sort them according to these rules. The first sorting should be based on count, right? If the count is same, if count is same, then sort on first index minimum, right? That's it. So how will it look like? It will look like first element is 2 times e came at first index and the value is e, right? This will be a first element of my vector tuple, right? Second element is 1, count is 1, it came at index 5 and the element was o, right? If I'm not wrong. Yes. So this is how you will store the elements. Now after storing this element, what you will do? You will traverse again on the string. Traverse on string. Yes. Right? And you will say if it is a vowel, is vowel. If it's not a vowel, you will simply add that character, the consonant in your string. You can't do anything about it. If it is a vowel, then what we'll do? We will say, okay, my index is starting at this point, right? Now, if my count, what I'm saying, if my count is greater than 0, right? Then if you have a count of e, let's say you had a e, right? Wait a second. We had a e and the count of e was 2. First index was this, right? So you will say, okay, I had a count of 2 and I encountered, let's say lead code. Let's take the example and be a bit clear about it, right? E was 3, sorry for that. So at this position, you will say E comes. Why? Because 3 was there, right? And you reduce this to 2. How will you reduce this? You will simply take out this element, right? You will say, okay, my array of index was this, and you update the value of this element, right? So array of I becomes array of index is something like this, right? You say, okay, array of index dot first minus 1, right? Now it becomes 2. If it is greater than 0, then you have to remain at this index, right? Okay, you go to this position now, right? It is also a vowel. You will say, okay, I need to decrement this again. So you make it a 1, right? Now it becomes E, right? Then a consonant, T comes, L here was there, C comes. Now you got a vowel. Is the value greater than 0? Yes, it is. So you will update this again and it becomes a 0. Now this place will be a E. And as soon as it becomes a 0, you will say, okay, I will do a index plus plus. Index is what? Index is nothing but the one which is variable, which is traveling on my vector, right? So which was this, right? This one. So index was standing initially at here. As soon as you hit a 0, it will be 3. As soon as you hit a 0, it moves to the next index, right? And see, we are not even taking care of this index. We have already sorted based on this. So we don't need to take care, oh, what is the first element where we got this? And all of these things have been taken care of, right? So you just need to traverse on this vector. Now comes D, you simply place it. Now your index is at first position and the character placed there is O. You will simply pick O and move out of the array string, right? And simply you got this element, right? Now let's quickly look at this test case and we'll move to the code as well. So it was 4 times A, 3 times O, 2 times I and 1 time E. 4 times A, 3 times O, 2 times I and 1 times E, right? Okay, this was my map, but this isn't enough, right? A comes at index 0, right? So A, how will my map look like? You also do the try run by yourself because you will understand it. I'm doing it side by side so you can check it, right? So count is 4, right? The first occurrence was at index 0, right? Should I copy this just to be a bit clear to you, or else you think I'm just running on other cases, right? Let me quickly write it. All right. So give me a second. Yes, a bit more. Yeah. So you got a at index 0, right? So you will say 0 and character was A. The most occurrence is 3, right? 3 and O came at index very far, right? 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, O, right? then 2i, right? 2, first occurrence was 2, 2 and I, and the last is 1, first occurrence was 1. See, the sorting, even though this element came last, the sorting will be first on the first element, which is the count. If the count would have been same, you would have thought about it. This not thought about it, you had simply would have taken the consideration of this element, right? This count, or rather the not the count, the first occurrence, right? Now you don't have any other options, right? You saw that all elements are vowel in this place, so you'll simply juggle it out, right? So it will first is a, you say 4 times a, and after it becomes 0, you move to the next index. 3 times o, you place all three index, this becomes 0, you move to the next index. 2 times I, you place 2 times I, move to the next index. 1 time e, you place it, and this is what the vector string you will have, right? So what is the time complexity which you will have? You will have big O of n, as because you are traversing on the loop and you are not using any nested loop, right? This is the top value. See, you have run 2 times a loop, so it would be big O of 2 into n, but ultimately this boils down to big O of n and our time complexity, right? And what is the space complexity? We are using a map, right? Map of pair to store the count, right? And then creating a tuple, right? So again, big O of n for this map and big O of n again plus this map, right? So ultimately it becomes big O of n again, right? So this is the space and time complexity. These will run perfectly fine. Let's look at the test case. Okay. So first what we did is created n, right? Now we are creating a map of character and pair, right? And for I equal to 0 to n, right? If we see it is a vowel, you know how to check a vowel, right? If you don't know, you can simply traverse. If you can simply say if it is a, e, I, o, u, the characters are only in lowercase characters, so you don't need to take care of these. And if it is that, then you will say okay, it is a vowel, right? So you will, if it is a vowel, then you will say okay, let me find in my map, does that character exist in my map? If it's so, if it does not exist, right, it equal to end, means the map does not exist, the character does not exist in my map. If that happens, then you will say okay, map of s of I will be the first occurrence, the first count, and then the first occurrence, right? Else map of s of I dot first, which is this element, you do a plus plus of that, right? Now I'm creating a tuple, right? Tuple consists of int means count, this int means the first index, and this means a character, right? You will simply traverse on your map. Char ch is it dot first, count is it dot second, right? Wait a second. So count will be it dot second as you stored in your map, right? See, the first element will be the character, the first the first map stores something like this, right? So map will be e, and after this e you will have 1 comma 5, let's say for 1 comma 1, right? So this is how your map will store. So the first thing you will have is char ch is it dot first, the map first character is I character, right? Count is it dot second dot first. So however the map stores, this is the second part, right? And second dot first means you got an element, you got the count of that, right? So count is that. And third is I first index will be it dot second, right? And you are simply pushing them in your vector, right? After that you are sorting based on the first element, that is the count, right? See, you pushed in as count first, then first index, then the character. So if your count is greater, it will be sorted based on that, right? If your count is same, then you move to the next. So this is a comparator we have created. So this, what does this do? If you don't know about it, you can drop that in the comment. I will make a separate video about how we create these, right? That is not a major part of this problem. You can read it about it on internet as well. This is a short thing, right? So what does this do? This simply checks if the two elements have same value, then whichever element has a smaller value, you keep that element at first, right? This is the sort comparator, right? So first we are sorting based on count, then on the first index, right? So we have created a string answer, index is initially at 0. You will see if it is a vowel, You find out all these things using that, right? So your vector will store these values and you are simply fetching those values, right? And you will say answer plus equal to character, right? If count is equal to 0, you move to the next index, right? Simply things. And if it is not a vowel, you simply add that consonant to your vector, right? And at the end you return the answer as well. So I will be putting the code in the comments. If you have any doubt, do ask in the comments. I will be happy to answer. Thank you for watching.